He's waiting for the gospel message to be preached to the four corners of the earth. He's waiting for that. You know, there's people on this earth that have never heard the message of Jesus Christ. We're never going to be able to get to the four corners of the earth unless we break out of the four walls of the church. So I had a friend of mine years ago who came from Italy, and when he came over, he smuggled in some tomato seeds, and he had this huge garden with these amazing giant tomatoes. And I owned a restaurant at the time, and I said, "Hey, Rino, can I have some of your tomatoes?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, sure." But I think he told me he didn't want me to like keep the seeds or something. I don't know. He was being weird about it because these were his family ancestral seeds, you know. But then I was saying, "Hey, Rino, just in case, like if I wanted to save a couple seeds, you know, how does that work? You know, what do you do?" And he's like, "Oh, you just take them and he just spread them out on a piece of wood and let them dry, and then, you know, then you just pick them off and plant them, right?" So I got all excited. I got this big piece of plywood out, and I wrote Reno's tomatoes, and I smeared a bunch of these tomato seeds on them, and I stuck them in, and we have basements in Pennsylvania, so I stuck them in my basement on top of this old freezer, and I forgot about them. And I think it was probably 15 years went by. Yeah, right? So 15 years, you know, and we're moving, and Reno died. You know, Reno's in heaven now, right? And his seeds are gone, and the tomatoes no longer exist, you know. And I'm cleaning up, and I find this board, and I looked at it, and I remember saying to myself, I said, "Well, what is this?" You know, and it said Reno's tomatoes, and I had these old, shriveled up, dried up, dead seeds, like literally stuck to a board for 15 years, totally dead, totally dead. And so I said to Christina, I said, "I'm going to burn that thing." Like I was getting ready to go throw it on a burn pile. And then she's like, "Hey, why don't you try to plant one?" So I said, "Oh, it's probably not going to work, but you know, oh, ye a little faith, but I'm going to give it a shot." Right? So I had to listen to my wife, right? So I got a cotton ball, right? I took a cotton ball, I put it in water, I stuck the seed inside of it, and I put it inside of a little plastic baggie, and I put it in a little warm spot, and I left it sit there, and I came back after a week, and I was so excited because I want to see my seed, you know. I opened it up, and it was just a seed sitting in a cotton ball. Like literally, there was nothing going on. So I told Christina, I said, "I'm going to just throw this thing away." And then something in me said, "No, just wait on it." And so I said, "Okay." So I left it go. And it was probably another week or two, I totally had forgotten about it. And I walked by, I was in the kitchen, I walked by and I saw that bag and I opened it up, and out of my seed was this wee little green sprout. Just this one little green sprout. Come on, 15 years. So my dad had this huge garden, and my dad's Italian as well, so I mean, he's got his own tomato crop, you know. And I said, "Dad," I said, "can you take my seed and grow it for me?" And he says, "Oh, absolutely," you know. So he grew me a tomato plant, and off that plant came a ton of tomatoes that year, a ton of them. And then he took the seeds out of those tomatoes, and he planted a full garden the next year of just Reno's red tomatoes, you know. And then he took and he dried me another big bag of those seeds, and I still have them. In fact, I just grew one this year. I said, you know, we moved in Florida, and I was leaving my dad's house recently in Pennsylvania, and I saw him on his shelf. It said Reno's tomato seeds. And I took them, and I said, "I'm going to take one back home, and I'm going to plant it." And I took it, and sure enough, here comes this tomato. There's life in a seed. There's life in your seed, right? But you know what? A lot of your seed is sitting in a bank account somewhere, dried up, dead, just like that board was sitting in my basement. A lot of your seed is some tied up asset that you're waiting for a rainy day for. Okay? And what the Lord says is, unless a seed dies and goes into the ground, and it has to go into the ground, right? And then it can produce multiple seeds. See, some people see an acorn. I don't see an acorn. Some people see an oak tree, but I don't see an oak tree. Some people see a forest out of a seed, but I don't see a forest. What I see is an industry that's wrapped around that forest. I see paper mills, I see lumber yards, I see houses that are being built, right? Out of that same seed. So it's all about my perspective on the seed. What is your faith telling you your seed's going to do? Is your seed going to produce a little plant? Is your seed going to produce one tree? Or is it going to produce a forest that produces an industry that affects a nation, that affects a culture?